I think we could probably start at least introducing ourselves, and maybe if you just want to say like something about what you're hoping to get out of this program and or why you're here, anything along those lines. Maybe where you're based, where you live or come from. Any of those things are really helpful. And since we're on Zoom, I'll have to call on people. So my apologies. I'll just call on you as I see you on the screen. But Karen, do you want to start?
Sure. I saw this program online. I love oysters. I love the environment, and I think oysters are great for the environment. I'm by training, I'm a nurse practitioner, and I'm in precision or have practice in precision lifestyle medicine. Oysters are super healthy. And I've just fascinated by the opportunity to be able to grow oysters.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, and I was at South Bristol and I just moved to Woolwich.
Oh, very nice. Good. Patrick.
I want you to do something.
Hi, I'm Patrick. So we'll be doing this. Lisa and I, my wife she'll pop up here in a second. So we actually have a house in Round Pond, and we were doing adult sailing lessons with someone who finished the program the last go round, and she highly recommended it. So we got excited about joining. So we're excited to learn about oysters and growing oysters, and then after 2 years, ultimately eating a lot of oysters.
Fantastic. Who was it? I have to know who my good ambassador is.
Lisa, what?
Oh, I think her name's Liz.
Liz.
Oh yeah, Liz.
Huh?
Yeah. Lives right in
Yeah.
Damascata. Yeah.
That's right.
I know Liz as well.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're actually calling in right now from Lexington, Massachusetts. So we split time.
Yep. That's great. Okay. Adam.
Can you find it?
Hey, I'm Adam. I live in Damascata. I hold a non-commercial shellfish license through the town, and so I've been harvesting wild Damascata oysters for a few years, and I was interested in the more aquaculture side of things. And I tried to get in 2 years ago and just missed the cutoff, and so sort of forgot about the program, and all of a sudden 2 years passed and the wait list expired, and I'm here now.
Super. I'm glad you're part of the slow food movement. That's very helpful in this case. And you're my first ever wild harvester, actually, which is interesting. So I've had lobstermen participate and all kinds of other people. But anyway, yeah. Yeah. Good. Donald. Do you prefer Don or Donald? Do you have a preference?
Dawn, Donnie, whatever you, hey, I'll answer to anything. Don Claflin, live in Massachusetts, similar to Patrick. I work down here I'm in facilities management at university for the School of Engineering over at Harvard, and actually learned about the class from an associate, Liz, who was in the class last go round, who also works at Harvard. And I have a place, don't get up there much in the winter, but I have a place on Pemaquid Lake. And so in the good weather, spend as much time as possible as I can up there. And again, I've been up there for a couple of years, learned about oysters, and kind of fell in love with them, and heard about this class and very excited to learn more.
Fantastic. Do you have other Claflin relatives up this way?
Not that I know of, but I know
Okay.
there's somebody up there in the boat building world, I believe, around town, I think.
I don't know about, one of our volunteers is Billy Claflin and his wife Bunny, but I don't know where exactly they live, even Bristol, I think. But anyway, Michelle.
Hi there. So all the reasons that Karen said regarding oysters are so I won't repeat that, all the same stuff. pretty obsessed with oysters, actually, like trying them from all over the country, New Orleans, the West Coast, wherever. Kind of obsessed with the shells and how they all look different and all that. I'm a community reinvestment act lender, and also split my time between, we split our time between Massachusetts and Rockland, Maine. It seems to be a trend here. We plan to move up to Maine in a couple of years full time upon retirement, and dying to do something that's not behind a desk and out in the water. So glad you
Super.
could get us all in. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, this will be that. So that's great. Good. Alexa.
Hi there. I also have a recreational shellfishing license that I've been using here and there to gather some oysters on wash up on the shore. And I live in South Bristol, and I enjoy foraging generally, mushrooms, I like clamming, and I want to learn more about oysters other than they happen to wash up on the shore sometimes and taste good. So. My friend Hedgen is also taking this class and she couldn't be here tonight, but just wanted to pass that on.
Yeah, that's super. So I will send out a recording to everybody. She should get that too, of course. And that way, I mean, you can fill her in, but she can also listen if she wants. So
Sounds good.
yeah. Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm video off today because I have been on Zoom all day. But I live in Portland, Maine. I moved there a couple years ago. And I'm originally from the Florida Keys. So I grew up on the ocean and, on boats, fishing, all that kind of stuff. And I've been looking for opportunities to do more of it. So I've been doing some sailing, and this seems like a good opportunity to just get out on the water. Yeah, and I love oysters. And I have been doing a master's degree kind of in the history of land use. So I'm also kind of interested in the cultural heritage part of this, if we get into any of that.
Super. Yeah, there should be opportunities for that. That's great, Alicia. Joseph.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe, and my wife and I will be participating in this program. We wanted to join for many of the same reasons that you all have said so far. We are relatively new to Maine. We moved to Portland about 2 years ago, and we really have fallen in love with the state and the Maine coast in particular. And when we heard about this program, we thought it would be a great way to not only get involved in an outdoor activity in the state, but also to learn something really interesting. Raising oysters seems fascinating. And we're also, interested in the learning more about the ecological, environmental aspects of oyster husbandry. Yeah, that's mostly. We're excited to be a part of this program, and looking forward to getting to know you all over this next couple of years.
Super. That's great. Thanks, Joe. And remind me your wife's name, please.
Liana.
Thank you. Great. So let's see. Oh, Ashley, thanks for joining us. We are just going around introducing ourselves, saying what you want to get out of this course or why you're here. And if you want to say where you're from or where you live, that's good orientation too.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'm Ashley. This is Kyle. We live in Whitefield right now, but are moving to Newcastle in a couple of months. And we're really excited to get on the water and learn something new. So similar to a lot of you. Yeah.
Great. Anything to add, Kyle? I just like to give spouses jump in opportunity.
Yeah, we actually originally, I think Ashley and Adam had applied for this a few years ago, and then it came back up, and we were really excited. The place that we're gonna live on Newcastle is right next to Glidden's plot on the northern Dodge Cove, and so there's a lot of oysters that wash up on the shore all the time, and we're just really excited to kind of like potentially do a little something over that way.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay, so I just want to use this as an opportunity to kind of get together and in a manner of speaking anyway, and I could just sort of give you the framework for the class and the program, give you an idea of what we're going to ask of you, what to expect in terms of like, I don't know, environmental hazards, stuff like that. And give you a sense of the schedule, although I don't have the exact schedule figured out yet. I should soon. And answer questions and just kind of make sure that it's going to be what you all expect it to be and so forth. So the way it works is we get together for lecture workshopy type classes in the evening, in the spring, usually for once or twice a week, depending on how consolidated we try to do it. Usually once a week from April through May and into early June. Some of the classes are, I invite speakers in, like Chris Davis comes in, and he is he works for the Maine Aquaculture Association, but he also has worked for the University of Maine, and he was one of the founding folks of the Pemmican Oyster Company, and he does a really nice oyster biology session, sort of 101, how oysters work. So we invite people like that in to do presentations. And a few of the classes are also field trips. So like one of our field trips is actually to Brooks Trap Mill in Thomaston, where we all just meet at Brooks and we get a tour of the Brooks Trap Mill, which is a lot of lobster traps, but also they have aquaculture gear and sort of marine gear in general. They do have a shop, and I buy a lot of our gear from their shop, and it's an opportunity to kind of see what gear is out there and talk to the salesman about that gear, and just opportunity for us to kind of, there actually is a like a social component of this as well, looking at kind of community connections and talking about, you know, who works at the Brooks Strap Mill and where does the wire for some of these things come from, and you know, who has to stack those pieces of gear in the warehouse, and how does that affect people's livelihood, and how does that affect the community? So there's that aspect of it as well. So that's one of the field trips we take. We also will take a trip to one of the I don't know for sure it'll be in the spring, but at some point we'll take a trip to one of the nurseries where they are actually growing oysters in the baby oysters called spat are going to be grown in a laboratory setting essentially. And so we'll get to visit one of those facilities and learn how they do that. And greetings, Douglas. Welcome. Nope. You're muted. So do you want to unmute yourself and say it again?
After 2 tries, I was so excited about this third one, and then I'm in the middle of working, and I realized I was 15 minutes late. I apologize.
I'm sorry. No, that's all right. Yeah, third try is the charm here. I had quite the issue, but it's all good now.
Anyways.
So glad you could join us. Yeah, we just went around and introduced ourselves. And so Douglas, you just want to say who you are and why you're going to join this class, hopefully?
Certainly, my Doug Lewison, my wife Maura Callahan is going to be participating with me in the joint approach that you take. We have a home in East Boothbay, right on the river, and we've been a long time fan of the oyster farms, and I'm very friendly with Barbara Scully of Scully Seafood. She was Linden Point early on. We also live down in Brookline, Mass, where I am right now. I'm an attorney, but my passion is being on the water in Maine if I had my druthers. So this is a good way to do it. So I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Super. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just giving a little bit of a rundown and saying that the early classes will be in April and May in the evening. I'll get an exact schedule to you hopefully quite soon of which days and so forth. I also will be sending you all a poll to find out if you all have preferences of days of the week, like if you prefer Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, or I don't know if it makes difference to you, but I can't promise what I'll do, but I'll do my best to accommodate folks to some degree if possible. And I'll also kind of say, like, you know, in the poll, like, absolutely can't ever, I want to hear, like, if it would make a difference, like there's certain things that you, certain days of the week you absolutely can't do. It's a make or break. I definitely want to hear that. So, or if there's specific dates that you're already know are out, I can work to some degree to avoid those. So, at any rate, so we'll put together a schedule of April and May of lectures and field trip evening sessions. And then we will purchase our baby oysters, which will be less than half an inch. I'm not sure exactly how big they'll be, but less than half an inch. We purchased them from Pembroke Oyster, and we spend a little time getting together to build some of the gear as needed. So I teach you how to build a bag. These are the mesh bags that the oysters will be growing in. And so I teach you how to do that. And you put your baby oysters in the mesh bags, and we all walk down to the shore and we put them on the growing site. And in fact, I'm going to share a picture just so you have a little, oops, a little bit of a sense of what I'm talking about, hopefully here. Let me find a, let's see. I have too many things on my screen, of course, I can't see anything, but there we go. Can you see the image on the screen of the water and the bags in the water?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. So we have two sites that we grow oysters on. One is more traditional in terms of what you're kind of probably expecting, which is that it's out on the water in the deep water down by Dodge Point, and you have to get a boat to get to it. And the other site, our primary growing site, is this right here. This is the near shore site. We also call it the mud site because it is quite deep in mud. And we have these rebar tables, essentially. They're just rebar stands that are not very, they're maybe 10 inches high or so. And we have the mesh bags that we bend and fold and put together, and put the baby oysters in there. And then we put those bags on these rebar tables, and the tide goes in and out. Nutrients wash off the land. The phytoplankton gets eaten by the oysters, and your oysters grow. And just like that, you're growing oysters. So this is a site that we use because it's convenient in some regards for people who don't have boats. We do have this other site that is accessible by boat, and we do have a boat that goes to it periodically, but not everybody can necessarily work with the boat schedule. So this way, whenever it's a low tide, you can walk. The nature center is at 110 Belvedere Road. It's where our work sessions will be held. And it's a Salt Bay Farm, if any of you know that, right in Damariscotta. And we'll go to the site, and you can just walk down at your whatever works for you, and do your oyster tending. So once the oysters are growing, that basically means like you'll be scrubbing the bags, you'll be checking your oysters, make sure they look healthy. You'll be making sure there's no little creases or something that the crab could get in there and eat your baby oysters. You might help each other out by scrubbing somebody else's bags. You probably will take your bag off. It's just held on by what's it called? Bungee cord. Sorry, blanking. Bungee cord, and so you just need to shake your bag. It actually breaks the leading edge of the oysters and makes them grow deeper instead of longer. And so you'll shake and scrub and check over your oysters, and that's essentially what you need to do from the time that you start growing your oysters in June all the way through the late fall. And you need to do it once every other week. Times that you're not available, you can get your spouse to do it, or you could get your other people in the class. You can spot each other. So, you know, if Doug is gone on vacation and Ashley's going to be down there, you guys can talk and say, okay, Ashley's going to go take care of Doug's oysters. And then when she's gone, he can go take care of hers or something like that. So we do that through the fall, and then in the late fall, and I did it really late. I did it in January this year, which was sort of a mistake. But anyway, we figure out we overwinter our oysters. So actually, the first year your oysters will go out to the site at Dodge Point, and they'll be put into the same bags, but the bags will go into a rack that's several deep, 3 or 4 deep. And those racks get lowered off the boat and sunk about 22 feet into the river so that the ice can't damage the gear, and the oysters kind of go into a torpor resting state. And they just sit there for the winter time, and then we pull them up in the spring and put them back on the growing site. Now, the growing site, at some point we can, depending on a few things, but sometimes the oysters can be grown here at the near shore site, but we can also grow oysters at the Dodge Point wintering site as well. And the only challenge there is that we have the boat and volunteers captain the boat, so we just have to have people whose schedule goes along with the boat schedule. That's all. But you can grow your oysters on either site. And the only thing that's really useful to make sure, if you do grow your oysters pretty exclusively at this mud site, we call it, it's really called the Blackstone Point site, and I shouldn't call it the mud site because that is terrible. But anyway, the advantage to, like, if you're going to eat your oysters the second year, and you probably want to finish them off for the last 2 weeks before you eat them at the Dodge Point site, because it's there is a little bit of silt from the mud, and it's not terrible, and I eat oysters from this site all the time, but you can taste it. And so I think they're much cleaner if they're grown at the Dodge Point site for the last little bit. So we make an effort to do that prior to harvesting. And so people harvest usually the second year, and sometimes it's been hard for people to eat all their oysters. So partly because we have more people this year, but partly because we we need to have a manageable amount of oysters, basically, and not kind of go over the top. So that's why we're gonna decrease the amount of oysters from previous years, but I think you'll still find that you have, we used to grow 500, but I think for now we'll start with, somewhere around 250 oysters per household. And I will say, and I'm going to knock on wood, but I haven't had people even lose 10% of their oysters, really. So you should do fine in terms of having enough oysters to grow. I do keep what I call insurance oysters. So if something crazy happened, I mean, the things that have happened, for example, is one year, I pulled up some of the oysters later in the spring than I meant to from the Dodge Point wintering site. The oysters were trying to breathe because it was warmer down there than I realized, because I wasn't totally cognizant of the temperatures. And they suffocated because they had too much silt from the winter sitting on them. And so people lost some oysters, but I did have insurance oysters, so I was able to, make up the difference or whatever. So that's the basic confines of the program. I did want to mention, so everyone realizes that we, and I'm going to stop the share here for a sec. I do welcome people's spouses and partners into the program. Some of you have already figured this out. If you haven't and you want to invite your spouse or whoever to join you, that's great. There's a couple reasons that this works well for me. And one is that it is a safety issue down at the shore. It's always good, hip waders, cold water, mud. It's always good to have someone there just to help you out, if possible. And so that's one reason. The other reason is that there are some biosecurity issues related to eating the oysters, and you'll learn all about this in class, but you do have to be careful about when you harvest, knowing when there's a red tide or harmful algal bloom, when there are bacterial issues and when not, what the risks are and things like that. And, if you're serving them to your spouse, I think it feels good to make sure your spouse knows what they're getting into as well. So, it hasn't scared anybody off yet, and I'm happy to eat the oysters as well. So, it just understanding fully what's involved. So that for me is a good reason, but presumably, it's just good for a household to participate together as well. So, yeah. So what questions percolate to the top right off the bat?
Well, I'll ask if no one else has one right away. Two questions, actually. You made reference to hip waders. Do you recommend hip waders or chest high waders for the Blackstone location?
I find hip waders are sufficient. Yep. And we have plenty that people can borrow, so you don't have to go out and get your own unless you want to. I do find for work sessions, you're probably going to want hip waders, although honestly, through the summer, a lot of people just go out in their shorts or whatever, get muddy and rinse off. And that's fine too.
And the second question I had, because I do keep a boat on the river starting in April into the fall, like if we start at the Blackstone location, but then can we shift them over to the river location if
Absolutely you can. Yeah, you can grow them there. Once I've set it up, you can grow them there. So right now, for example, it doesn't have any lines on it because it's not being used this winter. So I just have a couple buoys out there. There's basically what it is 50 pound mushroom anchors, lines that go up, line that goes across, marker buoys. And in the summertime, there's actually spreader bars with lines in between, and we just clip those bags in between the lines and they float. We can attach floats to them. And sure.
And can you get to the Blackstone location by water on the river? Can you get?
You can, but to do that, you'd have to go. I can show you on the map where it is, because I did pull up a map, I think. But you have to go under the bridge in Newcastle, or in town, and so can you all see the map here for a sec?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you see my cursor that's moving around below the 17 dot?
Yep.
So that property is where my cursor is now is the Salt Bay Farm. And it's on Belvedere Road. The address is 110 Belvedere Road, and I'll give you all this later too. But it's a preserve of about 115 acres on that side of the road. And can you see where my cursor is right now?
Yep.
In that little watery spot?
Yes.
Okay, so that is where our growing site is. So to get there, you'd have to go under the town bridge and under the Route 1 bridge. And really you can only do that at slack tide in my experience.
Okay.
And it's tricky. So
yeah, so that's the mud location.
It's the mud location,
the
precisely.
river location.
Yep. but you can grow out at the Dodge Point site,
Okay, which is
either or however you want.
got it.
Good.
Thank you.
Sure. What else are people wondering about?
So this is Dawn. Just one question, if for us Massachusetts people that wish we were in Maine full-time.
Yep.
Do you plan to do classes on Zoom again?
I can do some of them on Zoom. And I'm happy to make them available that way, and I can indicate on the schedule which ones are easy to do that way and which ones would be difficult.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, so that way you can kind of prioritize.
Okay.
You
All right.
know, so
Excellent.
yeah, some of them definitely it's not a problem. We could, the presenter will just have slides and talk. Obviously the field trips you'd lose a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
that way, but yeah, that's fine.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
We'll issue a schedule for those in advance so we can plan around the field.
Yeah,
trip.
I should be able to get it together in a few weeks at the most. So
The spot that you call the mud spot, is that
Yep.
the same location that you can see from Route 1 where all the current farms are?
we
Where-
are near there. Ours is so small that unless you know what to look for, you probably aren't seeing it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there are a number of aquaculture sites out there now.
Gotcha.
We were the first ones, but then
Yeah,
everybody
they
followed
all
us over
followed
there.
you.
But yeah, ours is way up against the bank, cause it's 20 feet from the bank. And it's only 20 by 20 or whatever. It's not even, yeah, so small.
Will each household have its own bag or bags, or will they be?
Yeah, that's a
with
good
other team members?
question. Yeah, so each household, I need to think this through, but I think each household can either have its own bag, or maybe when the oysters are small, you might share a bag with somebody else, but have them separated within smaller bags within the bag. And I think it won't be a problem to have the only reason I say I think it won't is because I have some students left over from last year who I'm in the process of kicking off my site, but they're trying to figure out some logistical things. And so if there isn't room on the site for everybody's oysters, the old students plus you guys, which there should be right away, and there will be eventually, I just have to finish kicking them off, but I don't want to actually kick them off. So, I'm trying to wean them off or something. I'm not sure what the right term is there, but so it will be a little smushy if they don't hurry up. They have a deadline, but I would think we would all be in short order all able to have our own bags. Yes. Just not, it's possible, not immediately.
And Sarah, in that vein, I'm sorry to dominate with questions, but I'm just
Good. Yeah.
once we're past like the initial lessons and then the initial planting of the bags and locating them, are we tending our crop kind of on our own and independently? I mean, we're not doing it are we doing it as a group, or we're just responsible to do our own thing?
Right. So it's kind of how the group, I've had some years the group wants to persist as a group, and they're sort of people kind of get into groups of 3 or 4 and tend to work together and meet up and go down together. It doesn't have to be that way, or it could be that way. So it's really up to you folks. If you like to, most people tend to just tend theirs on their own, and that is fine and good. And the only thing that's really important, I think, is that we communicate well. So just, if you see something important, you need, email me and be like, this thing broke. I can't find this thing. We don't have any more of that thing, whatever it is. So email is a really good way to get in touch with me and just communicate. And that way too, if I know that somebody else is going down there and they can help fix things up, that's also helpful. I am gonna ask and see if we can get one of our group to be kind of our site monitor or site tender. I'm not sure what the word is there. To kind of be my right hand man in terms of just helping me keep track of whose bags are where, who's doing a good job of getting out there and tending, who seems to need some support. If anybody, I literally have had people just sort of fall off the wayside. And lo and behold, I found out like they got Lyme disease and they weren't able to do any of the things they thought they were going to be able to do, but they probably were so incapacitated they couldn't talk to me even. So I didn't know it had happened, and I didn't figure it out for a while. So, things like that. So somebody just sort of help make sure that everybody still looks like they're doing what they set out to do and the bags are in good shape and that sort of thing. So I'm just putting that out there in case anybody knows they want to be the site monitor. But
Sarah, this is Dawn again. One more question is, are we
Sure.
starting right at the bags, or are we starting them when they're smaller? I've seen at Schooner's Landing over the side, I think it's Pemaquid's starting point. They got this little, I don't know what you call it, bubbler type of situation.
Yeah, it's called an upweller. Yes.
Upweller. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
I need your class and training. Are we starting at that level, or are we starting after that?
We are starting after the upweller stage.
Okay, good.
We don't have the gear to start when they're like grains of baby grains of sand. And the percentage that we would lose probably being relatively inexperienced, non-commercial, kind of growers, it just didn't make it worth it. So we tend to get them when they're a little less than half an inch or something like that, quarter of an inch to a little bit more. And
is that like, if down the line, if we ever went further with that, can you buy them at that level?
Yes.
Like develop that far, right?
Yes, you can. You kind of have to swing a deal with somebody, but yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
It's Maine, you'll be able to.
Swing a deal with Sarah.
Sarah, you were
Yes,
talking
Michelle.
about kicking out people from the last class.
Yeah.
Is that because they're looking for their oysters to be bigger, so they're trying to find a place to keep them to get to year 3?
Right.
Or they're starting new stuff, or like what?
Yeah,
are
so
people
good
doing?
question. Yeah, so you all are invited to be in our lease site for 2 years, and very often I'm lenient and let people stay on, a little bit longer. So if you have oysters that are still big and you want to overwinter them and grow them for a tiny bit in the spring before you eat them, that's fine. But these folks have grown their oysters for 2 years. In most cases, the oysters are totally edible, but they just have a good time growing oysters and they have a hard time eating enough oysters. And that's generally the rule, which seems unbelievable to some of us.
Yeah.
Some of them do not have any trouble eating a lot of oysters, but some of them just really love like the tending and the counting and the checking and the brooding and all that business. So that's fine. But they also, I think, there's several opportunities to go on and grow oysters in other ways. And they were reluctant to get rid of the oysters they had because they didn't really know what was coming next. And they wanted to have some bigger oysters that they could just keep growing. So there's 2 clubs. One is run by Brad Yost, who is a former student of mine. And they have a site out in the harbor area, essentially. And then there's another site that's new that's going to be run by Andy Gross, who is a more recent student of mine as well. Andy Gross's site is going to be just down the trail from our site, and you too might be able to join him in a couple of years. Brad Yost's site is the site is a little different. Like, it's not an inshore site, it's offshore, and it's I think what's happened with them is that they have one boat for a group of people, and a lot of times it's Brad and one other person who goes out and tends the oysters, but the people who actually own the oysters are not always the tending people. They're not tending the oysters. And so some of them have decided not to grow anymore because they really liked the tending part of it, but they weren't getting to do it. Some people like Brad because he does all the work and then they get oysters. So, you know, you guys will figure it out and do your own thing. Some of you may choose to go on and get your own LPA. We will go, or limited purpose aquaculture site. We will meet with DMR folks and you will learn about leasing. I can help you to some degree with learning about that. And I'm happy to, if people are applying for their own lease sites and they want me to read over their application, I'm happy to do that. So one of the advantages of the program, I think, for folks has often been that I'm happy to read it. I introduce you to people at the DMR who are always really good about answering questions. So if, as you're writing your application, you need to know who to talk to at the state agency, you just email them and ask them what they, you know, are asking about in their application. And then Dana Morris is the person who actually started this program, and he works at the Darling Marine Center. He's an aquaculture guru and technician, and he is a really good source also for people trying to figure out where they might site their own lease site, how, you know, what kind of gear they might use, what kinds of, he's good at helping people think, sort of troubleshoot, you know, what kind of things might they run up against, what do they do about a neighbor who doesn't really want an aquaculture site nearby, that sort of thing. He's lots of experience. I have fairly limited experience. My experience is really running the program and hearing a lot of other people's input. Dana has a lot of experience with commercial sites, so, and he grows oysters at his own site in the New Meadows River as well.
What time are classes generally going to be held?
So that is a good question. And in my poll, I think what I'll do is I'll try to find out what people's favorite time is. I'm pretty flexible. I think generally we've done them 4 to 6 or 5 to 7. They tend to be 2-hour classes. So if anybody has a strong preference right now, I'm all ears, but I'll ask those questions in the poll that I'll send out in the next day or so. Good.
Well,
Anything else?
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if other questions come up, feel free to email or call me. I'll make this recording available to anybody that didn't get to join us this evening. So if you know those folks, let them know. And I'll send out the poll and try to figure out some scheduling things and then get a schedule to you as soon as I can. So
Thank you.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thank you.
For coordinating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And thanks for your patience with this,
Totally fine.
whatever.
It happens.
Just builds more excitement that way.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Anticipation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks
Have
a
a good night,
bunch.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.